On this week's episode, the chaos within the comic book industry. What's next for the Elder Scrolls? And it's time to take a trip on Avenue 5. All this and more as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse.
Don't be alarmed. The quasi-shimmering light before you is a trans-dimensional gateway to other worlds, other voices, other thoughts, and other realities. Up feels like down, and down feels like the number 7 on a Wednesday morning. Don't worry. That quivering, blood-boiling sensation under your eyebrows is all a part of the charm. Welcome to the PCC Multiverse.
And we're back with another episode of the PCC Multiverse. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows, whether it's the PCC Multiverse, the Pop Culture Cosmos, the Lakers Fast Break Podcast, Topicocalypse, or Inside Sports Fantasy Football. But it wouldn't be a PCC Multiverse without my good friend. He's still the man who can't find any toilet paper for Pop Culture Cosmos. You got to check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.com. Also his great book, Congratulations, You Suck. And check out his awesome podcast today, Topicocalypse. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. What's up, man?
What's up? Just trying to outlast this whole thing. You know, it's frustrating. Yesterday I kind of got put into a deep, dark mental place. So I had to shut everything off and just play video games for a bit.
I don't blame you. A lot of other people are going through the same thing. It's really troubling at this point in time, what we're dealing with now and what's coming up in the future. We don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know how long it's going to be before it ends or before we get back to some semblance of normalness. I know a lot of people are trying to target April 12th, the Easter holiday break, as being something that we can go ahead and start getting back to our lives. But as what's also been said, the virus could have other ideas, and there's still many people suffering out there, and there's many deaths and things of that nature. So from all of us here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, our hearts and thoughts are out for all those that are suffering from the coronavirus, who have family members, who have friends, who have loved ones that are being affected by this crisis. I know we're all going through it at a tough time right now, but please, if you can, let's all work together. Social distancing, stay as much indoors as possible. Please follow those guidelines. It would help everybody out, and we can get through this thing faster and faster and faster if we all work together.
Also, be careful what you post to social media, because if you're trying to get people to be afraid and think that they're going to die every time they leave the house, it's not really helping, and I know you guys have the best intentions, but some people like myself, it has a taxing thing on our mental state. So let's try to, be responsible with information.
And you said this about our counterculture that we currently have, where, so many people go ahead and they become those keyboard warriors, and they just feel like they can go ahead and say and do or whatever they want when it comes behind their keyboards. And they go ahead and send out those messages of anger or hate or fear that gets everybody riled up. And a lot of people take in that, like you said yourself, you've been seeing what's out there on social media and the internet, and it's very scary for you to go outside or you to do anything right now because of what's going on and what a lot of people are saying to make this bad situation even worse.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just people doing this, it's the news sites too. Every news site has a different statistics, and the difference in them are in the hundreds and thousands when it comes to infections and deaths and things like that. And it's just a lot of people wanting attention, wanting the clicks, wanting things like that. And there's not really a lot of consideration for what this is doing to people. It's not just people aren't just afraid. It's not just people getting sick now. It's people who are truly, they're losing their jobs. They're losing their income. They're really struggling. And when you put that stuff out, it's really it's going to create a lot of damage to their mindset. And that's not healthy for anybody.
No, we're just all trying to find any semblance of positivity right now in our society, and it's getting harder and harder to. I won't disagree with you. I'm someone who, like you, has a journalism background, and as someone who studied journalism back in the university, which we both attended, National University, got to give them some props. It's hard to see the way the media is shaping all this because they do have to report the news. And I get that, and I understand that. And they do have to report where we stand now as far as the number of cases and whatnot. But they're providing us with very little hope beyond that. They're providing us with very little type of something that we can all latch onto. And that's hard at this point in time when you put so much negativity and so much harshness out there. It makes it hard for everybody to go ahead and still keep functioning because we are tuned into the news, because we want to know what's going on. And we see now that we have more cases of coronavirus than anywhere. We see now here in the United States, we have more cases of the coronavirus than anywhere in the world. We get that. We understand that now. But please, if there can be some type of positivity we can look upon as far as maybe some more stories or maybe some more news and information about people trying to work through this crisis together, things that are being done to help other human beings get through this crisis, no matter where it is in the world, we would truly appreciate it because we're trying to draw on more and more positivity that we can because we need all the positivity we can get right now. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult, but please, we're all in this together. We want to go ahead and try and get through this. We need some type of outlet to get into it. And hopefully we here at the Pop Culture Cosmos over the past few weeks have been, at least for a couple hours of your week, maybe a little bit more, some semblance of some type of escape for you. And if that's been the case, we're truly honored to be so. And hopefully we will be so in the future.
Seriously, hopefully we're a good outlet for you guys. We'll always tell you the truth, but do us the favoring kind. Like last night, I had a complete mental breakdown because I'm just being drowned in coronavirus stuff. All of my favorite places are closing down. All the people I care about are struggling, and I can't take in any more information like that. So just, please be considerate.
I hear you on that, my friend. And they can also turn to you coming up in the near future when it comes to your book, because you have been reading excerpts from your book, Congratulations, You Suck, to a live audience on social media and getting a very good response.
Yeah, so I've been trying to kind of give people something else to think about for a while. So I've been reading my book. I was going to read it today, but there was, I had some things come up at work I had to take care of. So I will be live streaming tomorrow around 1 o'clock. So if you want to tune in, just go to my author page on Facebook and you can listen along. I might rip those videos off Facebook and put them up on YouTube or Instagram in the future. But just for now, if you want to follow along, here's some story time, just tune in.
So you'll be reading that on Friday, the day this airs, correct?
Yes, Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Well, there you go. Look for today. If I'm able to, I'll go ahead and share it onto the Pop Culture Cosmos page for Facebook, so I can go ahead and get that extra stream. So give people an extra outlet to take a look and see what's going on, because they can go ahead and cheer up with a couple chapters excerpt from your awesome book. Congratulations, You Suck. Well, we are going to be talking a lot of great subjects today, and we're also going to have a great guest on here in a minute, Shawn Burns from Now You've Seen It, the podcast available everywhere you get your podcasts, and also the upcoming Battle List. He's stopping by to talk about the HBO comedy series Avenue 5. Plus, also, Josh and I are going to be talking about what may be coming up in the future for the Elder Scrolls. I'm going to talk a little bit about Star Trek Picard, and also, Josh, a little bit about the Nintendo Direct Mini.
Yeah, it was a big mini.
Yes, that came out earlier today as we're recording this, to complete surprise to a lot of people. A lot of people didn't even know they were doing this. But it did have some information that Josh and I wanted to go ahead and talk about. We'll talk about that later in the show as well. But first, my friend, like we talk about, this coronavirus is affecting a lot of industries adversely. And one of those industries we haven't talked about in a while that is being adversely affected is comic books. And I know when I first met you, you were, a big fan of comic books. You're a comic book aficionado at that point in time. You were really drawing a lot of inspiration in some of the articles that you were writing within the framework of the comic book realm. So I want to ask you, my friend, your thoughts on the comic book crisis that's going on. a lot of big comic book names are no longer distributing or sending out hard copies of their comic books because obviously they don't want to go ahead and either they're laying off workers because they're deemed not essential, or also the possibility of contamination with the coronavirus. But then again, on the end sellers as well, these comic book stores, these local mom and pop comic book stores are not staying open because they're not deemed essential as well. And I just wanted to ask your thoughts on it because, first off, comic books are a great way for people to escape the realities of life that's out there. What has comic books meant to you over the years, and how sad is that for you to see what's going on with comic books?
It's really sad to me. I think about it like this. This is the danger. So Diamond Distributors bought up a lot of the other public or the comic book distributors back in the 90s. And this is what happens, right, when you create a monopoly on something. So it's good and it's bad, right? It's bad because a lot of these comic book stores aren't getting new issues. But then again, none of them are open. So maybe that has something to do with why Diamond Comics isn't distributing right now. But it also creates a good market for digital comics.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you surprised that Dark Horse said it's not going to release anything new digitally until they're able to go ahead and send out print publications again?
I mean, I love Dark Horse. They're like my favorite publication because they got Hellboy and BPRD and Solomon Kane, things like that. But yeah, well, I wonder too if it has anything to do with maybe a majority of their market is in paperback sales. So, I mean, if they're shutting their doors and they're kind of keeping closed till this whole thing is over, it might not be costing them. They're not paying writers or anything. So it's kind of like they're putting things on pause unless they got to pay the, whatever deposit is on the building or the, utilities and things like that. But I don't know. This whole thing is so weird because look at video game sales, right? Video game sales have boomed. You go to any Target or any Walmart, you won't find a single Nintendo Switch on the shelf. Same thing with PlayStations and Xboxes. Even the games, like even some of I was at Target the other day, even some of like the low grade Switch games that nobody cares about were just gone. Like people are just ransacking shelves for video games everywhere. And if you look at that, like comic books should be doing the same thing, right? Like people are looking for things to entertain them while they are stuck in their houses, and this is an amazing time for them. This would be a great marketing opportunity, and it just seems like it's not such a great idea to not even put out digital stuff. Like that seems like a bad idea to me, unless Dark Horse is kind of one of those people who's trying to not, much like myself, not go silently into that all digital future.
Well, I hear you, my friend. I know a lot of people are stubborn like that, and I don't say I disagree with you because comic books in a print form is the original way to viewing these things. And to a lot of people, not only is it just nostalgic, it's just, to them, it's almost sacrilegious in a way. Would I say not? I mean, it's just to a lot of people, they would just never go digital, even though Marvel and DC have pushed it hard over the recent years. They have pushed it very hard, their digital end, but they found a lot of pushback because a lot of people found it just reprehensible to even feasible to go ahead and view comic books within a digital framework.
Yeah, but I mean, look at what everyone's doing right now. Like this is a time you have to make changes or you have to kind of adapt in order to stay alive. I would hate to see Dark Horse shut their doors for good because they don't want to print digital comics. Like this is not saying that they have to do this forever, but like, yeah, put full steam into digital comics because you don't know.
Well, they just didn't want to do it while they can't put out, let's say, whatever they're producing. Let's say the latest issue of Hellboy. They won't put out the latest issue of Hellboy on digital until they're able to put out a print version of it. So that's basically.
It's probably because they make a lot of their money off of the physical copies, right? And the variant covers and the sketch covers and all the things like that. And they're losing that potential markup just because people want to read it right away. They want to read the digital copy. But at the same time, like, even if you have to take a hit for the month, get low revenue on something, you're keeping the lights on. You're keeping people employed in a time when America desperately needs that. So it seems kind of foolish to me to not do that, despite what the reasons might be.
I agree with you, my friend. People need to go ahead and adapt during these trying circumstances. And one way, if you're a big-time comic book fan, would be to migrate over to a digital format. I think that's probably the way if you haven't done already. And I remember within, like I said, recent years, Marvel and DC, especially Marvel, were always throwing me email incentives, big percentages off the actual service itself, or buying comics digitally, you were able to get some big discounts over the tangible paper versions of comics. I mean, that's something that I think gets often overlooked, something we've talked about from a digital format where you could always run sales on digital formats of video games, and you could potentially, in theory, get a lot of great deals on that because you're not spending the type of money on the packaging and all that. But we've seen, except for Steam, for a while, anyways, from PSN and Xbox Store and all that, they were reluctant to go ahead and do so. Now they're following the Steam format and running big sales every now and then periodically and gaining that general revenue off of that. Do you see now that people are going to have to go ahead and modify their lives, and especially if they're comic book fans, do you see them changing? And you also see big benefits for them financially in doing so.
Well, that's the only way these companies are going to stay alive is by making those changes, making those transitions, putting more effort into ways of marketing that you didn't think were there before. You know, I'm looking at it. We keep talking about this, but a perfect example is the gaming industry, right? Like, look at the email that Square sent out saying, hey, if you got a physical copy of Final Fantasy VII, you're not going to be able to play it until 3 or 4 weeks after the game comes out. I know Capcom just sent out another thing today saying that, hey, if you Resident Evil 3 remake is still slated to come out on time, but if you order a physical copy, especially if you're in Europe or whatever other country they named, you're not going to get your physical copy on day one. They didn't even give an ETA on when they might get it. So digital sells. You have to make that transition, and there's a lot of companies being smart about it, right? Like Square and Ubisoft, like they're putting out these massive sales, anywhere from like 40 to 80% off on games and things like that. And I know Barnes & Noble has been doing big discounts on digital books because they want people to read. They want to keep their business alive. They're not an essential store, so they need to make the changes necessary to create business, create revenue. And that's the only way, because a lot of these places, I talked about before we started talking about on the show, is that a lot of the places that I care about, places that I love to go, they're shutting down. And it's not just, I'm hearing a lot of people going, oh, well, they're going to reopen once this thing is all over. Doesn't happen like that, right? A lot of these people are shutting their doors because they cannot operate. And that, in layman's terms, is going out of business. So a lot of people won't be recovering from this. So if we lose Dark Horse, or we lose, God forbid, Marvel or DC, like, it's not going to be something that can be recovered. They're going to have to start over from scratch if they do come back. So it's really dangerous to not adapt, especially, and it's also foolish, especially if you have the ability to do it.
You're listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos. Don't touch that dial. Wait, do people still use dials?
For the latest news and information, analysis and opinions on the Los Angeles Lakers and the NBA, check out the Lakers Fast Break podcast today on wherever you get your podcasts. One thing I wanted to ask you is, okay, let's say someone has the time on their hands to go ahead and delve into the digital formats of comics, whether they're a seasoned pro, someone who's very into the comic book scenes, or someone that is brand new to the comic book scene, someone, maybe a comic book noob per se, who wants to go ahead and peruse the world of comic books. Right now, there's no new Marvel movies coming out anytime soon. Black Widow's been delayed. We talked about that on our previous episode, the Pop Culture Cosmos, where we restructured in our way that we think would probably be best the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but that would be not taking place for a little while. So I want to ask you, my friend, what are some of the series, what are some of the comic books that you would say, hey, Josh, I got this Marvel or DC digital service I just downloaded, or Dark Horse per se. Where would you lean them? Which service, or actually which comic book series really intrigue you the most over the years? Which ones that you have really caught your interest? Which ones from beginning to end, as far as story arcs, really are something that you would point to that made you a comic book fan?
Okay, well, I mean, like I mentioned to you earlier, I have not read a lot of comic books in a long time. Like, I used to really love them, but some of my favorite series would be Hellboy is really good. Love everything Mike Mignola's ever done. Same thing with, BPRD is not as good as Hellboy, but it's still satisfying. You know, it gives you that dark Renaissance style artwork, and it's got the tones and all the supernatural stuff working for it. Batman Beyond is really good. Like, if you were a fan of the show when it was on Kids WB back in the day, like, it is definitely really good, and it's a lot. It picks up the story of Terry McGinnis after the comic book, and it goes like it's really good. If you feel like you needed closure in that episode of Justice League didn't do it for you, this is definitely a good place to pick up. Another story arc, I'd say Ultimate Spider. That whole Ultimate universe is really good. You know, Ultimate Spider-Man's great. Ultimate Fantastic Four is, you know, it's whatever, X-Men's whatever. But like, if you read all the things that tie into those, if you read the Ultimate Marvel universe as a whole, you will not be disappointed in it. It is spectacular. It's just great to see a reimagining of these heroes for a younger age. It kind of makes me sad that they destroyed that whole thing. Miles Morales' run of comic books is really good. Umbrella Academy is one that I also like. Sin City is a good place to dive in, or a good set of graphic novels to dive into. You know, also something I really did enjoy was the Gunslinger comic books, the precursors to Stephen King's book series. So those are my picks. What about you? You thinking about picking anything up?
I just think there's good combinations where if you like one series and you like to see it from a different format, or if you want to get into something else, some type of digital comic or digital graphic novel could be the way for you to go at this point in time as a diversion, as an escape. And the comic book industry, which is suffering so hard right now because, like you said, comic book fans have been so reluctant to latch on to something digitally. They wanted something like you've always talked about with your video games. You've always wanted to make sure you wanted a tangible copy in your hands. You like it the way you're as a collector. It's the way you like to put it on your shelf, things of that nature after you're done with it. Same thing goes with a comic book collector that you have. I'm sure you have lots and lots of comic books still at your house right now. Not asking people to go to Josh's house, mind you, but you still have lots and lots of copies of comic books that are available that you have because you like the hard, tangible feel as far as opening and turning the pages. People were always reluctant to go to a digital format, and maybe now this is the time for people to start looking more into the digital realm for comic books. If they do, I'd say for me or someone who is not as hardcore into comic books and never have been, I've dabbled in it little by little over the course of the many years, but not been really someone that's stuck 2 feet full deep into it. I know recently when my daughters were really into it about 2-3 years ago, right when we were starting the beginning of the show, I remember that I was going to the comic book store every month and taking them, and they were getting comics and enjoying it. And they would sit down for hours and read and read and read until they found the love of Kindle and electronics and laptops. And, need I say more on that? But I will say this, my friend, it was an escape for them, and comic books can really do that for children and, for people of all ages, actually. But 2 places for comic book fans I think they should go, I think first off is Secret Wars. And the reason why I say the Secret Wars is a great place to start for people is because if you're really into the MCU and you loved what took place within the framework of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Secret Wars, if you read the comic books right now, could be a key or could give you a little hint of what's to come in the future. Not necessarily Phase 4, mind you, but Phase 5, Phase 6 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Secret Wars could be a definite possibility for a future for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, I agree. And I also don't feel like Secret Wars was always kind of a cop-out. Marvel has done this thing where they have just created so many universes, and I've admired them for that, like letting different artists and writers have their take on these heroes. They don't have to exist in a timeline, but then those comic books become successful, and boom, they're branching out of that timeline. DC did it right? They had all these properties, and then with what's that big event they had, Crisis, right? They brought all of those universes together. Now they just have one universe, one mainline comic book, and they kind of reset everything. So you can pick up issue 1 of The Flash, and you would not be lost in the years and years and years of stuff behind it. Marvel, they tried to do something like that with Marvel Now, and then they ended up not resetting any characters. They just kept the same arcs open. So even if you like the characters that you pick up, you have to go back and read comic books dating back to the 60s And that has always frustrated me. They had such a great opportunity with Secret Wars, but I think they kind of screwed the pooch, so to speak.
But for casual fans, I think it's something that they could better get into. And I think they will be drawing on some storylines from that series when it comes to the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. At least that's what I think. I think they're going to go ahead and draw from it because it was a very popular series for them, for Marvel. And I think they're going to go ahead and take some from it, at least some steps from it, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of source material to draw from on something like that, but Marvel, again, like, people are feeling Marvel burnout. So if they were to like kind of do some of the things they do with comic books with the movies, I'm not sure it would go over so well. So it all depends on where they're going with the MCU and how they want to do all that.
Now, the last series I would recommend came out very recently, within the past couple of years, and that is Secret Empire. Secret Empire is something that I know a lot of casual comic book fans really enjoyed, especially because of the fact that they were getting something different. And it obviously gained news because Captain America and his turn into, let's say, a dark side, per se, it was something that was caught a lot of fans, either casual or otherwise, out of left field. And, yes, it was for shock value, and the rest of the stories on it were a little bit uneven, but for the most part, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was something that it's easier for casual fans to get into because of the fact, like I said, if you're dealing with something that you're familiar with or some steps from the Marvel Cinematic Universe that you can take into the comic book realm, I think this was not kind of like a nice bridge. And I think that Secret Empire is something that if you really want to get started and get into something that's modern, that you could really get into to get started within the comic book realm, I think Secret Empire is not a bad place to go because it was something that they promoted and something that they promoted very well, and it has some semblance of familiarity people out there. And then, of course, like I said, because of the controversial nature of some of the characters, Black Widow played a major part. There were some things that happened there. And then also Captain America and his turn towards the dark side and the events emanating after that. It ended up on something that maybe was a little bit rushed. The fans that are out there that cried from the internet to make some changes, I think that influenced the series overall when you look at it. But still, I think it's something that a lot of general fans could get into, especially if you're going into it at first before you really get into the comic book realm.
Yeah, I mean, I've never read it, so I'm gonna trust your opinion on this. But yeah, it sounds like it could be cool. There's also, for you guys out there, a lot of good series outside of the Marvel DC continuities too. So, there's a comic book out there for everybody, like literally for everybody. So don't be afraid to look.
Absolutely. If you've never stopped into a comic book store and you do for the first time, it's mind-boggling because you will see the walls from end to end covered with current issues going on of all the different types of characters, all the different types of comic series from all the different brands that are out there. And that's amazing that even in an age where comic books as a whole, and we've talked about this before back on our show, where comic books sales were starting to slide as a whole, there's still, you could walk into a comic book stores and find all these different things and find something that you could relate to. My daughters could relate to several different types of comic books that were available to them. And so many others could you look and see, okay, this is for my genre. This is for my genre. If you're still itching for some Star Wars after the Rise of Skywalker, you could go into that. That tells a great detail about not only some of the older characters, but some of the newer modern characters as well. They have their own storylines. So you can look into that. But also many other great comics that are out there. They're by the hundreds in some cases when you go to comic book stores. So it's a great thing to see still out there. If you can, and you're interested in comic books, sign up today to your digital service of your choice, whether it's Dark Horse, DC, Marvel, or whatever digital service that's out there that supports comic books. From us, we think you'll be glad you did. What are your thoughts out there on comic books and the comic book industry that has really been hit hard by the coronavirus? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humanity Media, and Game Source on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Well, coming up next, Shawn Burns is going to stop by to talk some Avenue 5. And then right after that, Josh and I will be back to talk a little bit about Elder Scrolls, Star Trek Picard, and the Nintendo Direct Mini on the back end of the show. This is the PCC Multiverse.
Coming soon from McCallum Films, Zero Cool Films presents Action Figure Adventure. Super collector Jay Bartlett hits the road once again in search of action figures, most iconic and noteworthy and rare figures, all in the name of creating the most ultimate action figure auction ever. He fronts the cash, the charity benefits in the end. What will he get, how will he get it, and how well will he do? Find out November 1st, 2020. This and many more from McCallum Films.
It's Gerald Glasser coming right back at you here from the Pop Culture Cosmos. Well, one of the shows that seems to be going under the radar for the most part, but is still very much beloved out there, is Avenue 5, HBO's mature-rated comedy that's out there. And it's something that it's very, very good. Just if you get a chance to go ahead and see it, please go ahead and do so because it's gotten very good reviews. Word of mouth is pretty good on it, everything like that. And there's 9 episodes that are waiting for you. You didn't have to wait for HBO Max or anything like that. If you have access to HBO, it's a great show to get into. It's only 9 episodes so far. It's already been greenlit for a season 2, so obviously the fans are getting interested in it. The ratings are good enough to go ahead and warrant it. And like I said before, the critics are going ahead and saying good things about it. And here today to talk about a lot of great things when it comes to Avenue 5 and so much more. He's got not only 1, but 2 great podcasts on tap. First is that's available now everywhere you get your podcast. It's a great show talking about all the things going on with movies called Now You've Seen It, which is available everywhere you get your podcast. And also, they've got a game show coming out on April 1st, and that is Battle List. Battle List is a show coming up. You got to check that out coming April 1st to podcast outlets everywhere. It's Shawn Burns. And Shawn, just great to have you part of the program.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you here on the show. And I did get a chance to see the episodes of Avenue 5. And, if people are familiar with House, I would probably say, first and foremost, maybe a little bit more mature-rated Hugh Laurie, who takes the role as I'm going to put this in air quotes, captain of the Avenue 5, per se. I think it's probably the best way to describe it. It does not take itself anywhere near seriously at all. If somebody just right now, especially with the times that we're in, wants a very light comedy, I think this is probably a good place to start.
Yeah, the way I've kind of described it to people is that it's social satire through the lens of Love Boat meets Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, because it has that really dry sense of humor, that black comedy that, if Douglas Adams sat down and wrote an episode of The Love Boat, this is what we would end up with.
Yes, absolutely. A great mixture right there for you, and a lot of interesting details. As this Avenue 5, first off, if you're not familiar with it, put it like Shawn said, Love Boat, and it's like an interstellar cruise line going from planet to planet, and along the way that, the captain there to kind of guide the ship in the right direction, at least that's the theory anyways, is Hugh Laurie. Josh Gad, he's playing the owner of the cruise line of the Avenue series and is the owner of the Avenue 5. He's actually involved. He's a passenger who sometimes is not all there because of certain things that he does during the course of the program. So, yes, he's there. And, he's not doing Disney. He's doing this. So it's a great thing for him. There's a lot of other great cast members as well. But tell me, if you could tell our folks out there, you could tell our listeners exactly what really brings you into the series. Was it something because of Hugh Laurie? Obviously his work from House that people know here in America so much, but as a great British comedian, his history of what he's done over the years has just been priceless. But tell me about the allure that it had for you initially as you got into the show.
Well, I really like sci-fi and I really like comedy, and when the two are blended well, it makes for a really fun show. Like, I really enjoy The Orville, and Galaxy Quest is one of my favorite movies. It's just so much fun when they can take all of the sci-fi tropes and kind of stand them on their head and purposefully point at them and laugh. And I think that's what a lot of these shows do. The cast is outstanding. I never saw a single episode of House. I'm probably one of the few people who's never seen an episode of House. But every time I've seen Hugh Laurie interviewed or in other things, he's always been very intriguing. So I wanted to check this out. And then Zach Woods shows up, who's Gabe from The Office, and he was in Silicon Valley, and he plays Matt, who is, I guess if we're going with the Love Boat analogy, he's kind of your Julie, kind of your cruise director. And Susie Nakamura, who played Allison Park on Dr. Ken, plays Judd's executive assistant, Iris Kimura, and she's fantastic. And then the character Billy McAvoy, the ship's engineer, played by Lenora Critchlow, I think her name is. She's fantastic. I think she's probably one of the highlights of the series for me, is her performance as Billy.
Yeah, like I said, the episodes I've seen, the cast, they seem to work well with each other. As far as what people need to go ahead and check it out for, obviously Hugh Laurie and Josh Gad, they're the ones that are the prime, individuals that people know, the stars that people can relate to, and they're obviously very good on screen. But yes, the supporting cast around them makes for the show. I think that helps fleshes out the context of the 9 episodes that are there. And you're right, it does have that feel of what you were talking about with the Orville. The Orville, though, sometimes goes off into not sure what it wants to be, whether it wants to be a drama, whether it wants to be a sci-fi pick, or whether it wants to be a comedy. Sometimes it depends on the season. I mean, earlier in the episodes with the Orville, it started to be out the screwball comedy, and then it started to go into a little bit more serious nature. So it's still finding its niche as it goes and heads over to Hulu. But with Avenue 5, straight off the get-go, you know what you're getting. And Galaxy Quest, as someone who is a great fan of that movie as well, I mean, it's something that if you're into, like you said, comedic satire, this is definitely up your alley.
Yeah, and in addition to the cast, I think the scenes are beautifully shot, especially any of the scenes that are outside of the ship, I think really are very well rendered. I don't know how spoilery we want to get, but the particular ring of a certain waste object going around the ship when they light it up, and when you see the Pope's face in it and everything, it's amazing what they've done with it, and they're just beautifully rendered effects.
Absolutely. You can see HBO giving this show quite a bit of love, and it's very interesting to see how much love HBO is giving it, because it is not one of the quote-unquote highlight shows, one of the shows that they're really branching out there, one of the shows that they're really pushing. It's not Westworld, which they're trying to promote so heavily out there. It's, like I said, in many ways going under the radar. And I hear most of the scuttlebutt around this show in regards to people talking to each other about it, people on social media commenting on how much they love the show. You have indicated how much you love the show. That's how you and I first connected for this interview, is because you really wanted to talk about how much you loved the show and how entertaining it was. I wanted to ask you this, though. The show, if the only thing I could say as far as a little bit of a critique standpoint is it gets a little bit, everyone seems to be angry all at the same time. And that happens quite a bit on the show. And while it does create for a lot of laughs, it puts them kind of a little bit against the wall narratively as far as it's concerned, where there's not someone to bounce off of. Sometimes because of the precarious positions that they put themselves into, they come off a little bit angry towards each other a little bit too much. Do you find that at all, or do you think that's okay? Because, like I said, they're always running up against these strange and weird goings-on while they're out there in space.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dichotomy, because it starts... To me, it started out kind of a slow burn, but it's a very fast-paced show, and that's kind of hard to reconcile in your brain. But yeah, I can definitely see the point of everybody they're trying to almost one-up each other in how angry they can be at times. And, the character of Karen mixed in, who's kind of like the representative of the average, quote-unquote, passenger on the ship. She tends to ratchet up the the tension a lot as well. But they do a good job, I think, of playing comedically off of all of that tension. And so a lot of times when they build it up, it is for good comedic effect.
Absolutely. And I agree with you on that. It's just everybody is so angry on that show for cruise ship all the time. It's just kind of funny in a way. And then it gets to the point where, like, chill out, people, for a little bit there. But yes, it is something that I think a lot of people will go out of their way to enjoy, because I have found the episodes to be very humorous. And obviously you have as well, because you have such great things to say about it. And I wanted to ask you this. It did get greenlit for a season 2. And if that's the case, where do you want the show to go in its next season?
Well, again, without getting too spoilery, one of the major characters kind of departs the Avenue 5 in a way at the end of the season. And I'm really kind of curious to see where that character's other half kind of goes in the next season without them to lean on. I think that's going to be a really interesting character development. They're setting it up for a long haul. I mean, they've basically got it to where they're 3 years away, possibly more than that. So they definitely have it set up for a long-term thing. I don't know where they're going to go with it. It's so weird. And, you mentioned about the times that we're in right now. And one of my favorite memes going around right now is, waking up in 2020 is like Captain Picard, every morning damage report. And this show is kind of like that. It's like at the beginning of every episode, it's like, okay, what's gone wrong so far and what else can go wrong? And I mean, if they can continue to hit on those notes and hit them well, I think it's going to be, a really interesting season 2.
And Hugh Laurie is just hilarious in the show. I think he's just so funny, especially the fact that he's mocking himself in his accent. And there's an episode, I don't want to go ahead into really great detail about it, the spoilers, but he mocks his own fact that, you know him from House, where he had the American accent, but he's actually British by nature, and the fact that he goes ahead and mocks his own accent during the course of one of the episodes is quite funny. And I just thought it was quite amusing how he's poking fun at himself and also other actors that go ahead and, like we've seen over the course of the years, Australian or British, they have a very easy way to blend in American accents real easily. And it's just so funny how they were able to go ahead and touch upon that on that particular episode. But yes, overall, the show's been a lot of fun. And I do highly recommend it to a lot of people out there. And I know you do as well. One last question on Avenue 5. And as far as that's concerned, if in just a short bit you could tell people one last time about Avenue 5, why they should really get into it, because, sci-fi is something that seems to be, for a limited audience on occasion. See, some people really just stay away from science fiction type genre type shows and whatnot. If you could go ahead and talk to those people, what would you say to them to try and see if they could get themselves into watching a couple of episodes? Because if they do, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be glad that they did.
Yeah, the main thing I would say is to disregard the sci-fi aspect of it up front. Kind of like how once you get past the first 1 to 2 seasons of The Walking Dead, it's not so much a show about zombies as it is a soap opera that has zombies in it. The sci-fi is not the main part. The sci-fi stuff that they do is so over the top that real sci-fi fans might get a little bit perturbed by it. But if you go into it as comedy that just happens to take place on a spaceship, I think you would find it much more enjoyable. And this, again, is definitely one of those ones you have to give it 3 episodes. I don't think you can accurately judge it based right on the pilot, but the good news is it's a shorter show, so it's not as big a time investment to get to 3 episodes and really have a good idea of what you're getting yourself into.
Absolutely. I think people should give it a try. And I also think people should give it enough episodes because it is worth their time. And plus, like you've said and like I've said, in these times that we're having right now, everybody needs a good laugh. And Avenue 5, to me, is a very good place to start. It's been very, very well received, very well reviewed. It has gone under the radar with a lot of people. I mean, I don't hear as far as, you've got to watch this show. You got to watch this show from the press per se and from the media. I hear it more like I was talking about earlier as a word of mouth type deal. But again, it's got enough viewers, so it's been greenlit for season 2. And that's the case. That means HBO's behind it. And if HBO's behind it, that means a lot of people who are watching it keep on watching it. So that's a good sign for the series going forward.
Yeah, definitely.
One last thing I want to talk to you about, Shawn, is that you've got not one, but 2 great podcasts coming on tap. In fact, you've got one right now that's out and available. That's Now You've Seen It, a great movies podcast that's now available everywhere you get your podcast. And on the 1st of April, you've got Battle List, an interesting type game show concept for a podcast. So if you could go ahead and share with our listeners before we head on out about not only your Now You've Seen It podcast, but Battle List, I'd be very appreciative, and I know our audience would be as well.
Yeah, Now You've Seen It is a fun podcast that has a little bit of a twist. There's so many podcasts out there reviewing 80s and 90s type movies and some 2000s movies as well. What kind of sets us apart is each episode we bring on a guest who has never seen the movie before and is watching it for the very first time. Hence, Now You've Seen It as the title. We've covered Alien, we've covered The Thing, we've covered The Jerk, we did Groundhog Day. It's been a lot of fun, and it's really interesting to see some of these movies that you loved as a kid or as a young adult, and then somebody who's watching them for the first time now in 2020, and how differing the views can be, how much we really look at a movie like Goonies or Indiana Jones through these lenses of nostalgia, and taking those away gives us an interesting insight to the movie that a lot of other podcasts I don't think have the option of getting. Battle List is a brand new thing. We just recorded 3 episodes of it this week. We're hoping to have that first one out right on or around April 1st. And we have 2 contestants on each episode. They're typically podcasters. And we give them a list of 15 places or people or items. And then we give them a category. And their job is to figure out which of those 10 belong either in the top 10 or they fit the criteria of the category. For example, one of our episodes we recorded had the top 10 flavors of Pop-Tarts. And so the guests go back and forth picking off of the list which ones they think are in the top 10. And some are surprising and some are, pretty straightforward guesses. And then some of the lists are things like, I give them a list of 15 countries and 10 of them have hosted Olympics and 5 of them haven't. And they have to kind of vie to figure out which ones were Olympic host countries. We're going to run 12 episodes. And at the end of the 12 episodes, the 8 people who scored the highest, whether they won or lost their particular episode, the 8 highest scores are going to be invited back for a tournament of champions at the end of the season before we repack everything and go into another season.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Very interesting concept. I like it a lot. That's Battle List. That's coming your way on the 1st of April, everywhere you get your podcast. And if you want to check out what he's doing now, check out Shawn Burns today on the hit show Now You've Seen It, everywhere you get your podcasts. Well, Shawn, it's been great talking to you about Avenue 5. You're more than welcome to come back on the show at any point in time to talk movies, TV, pop culture, anything you like, right here on the Pop Culture Cosmos.
If you're tired of sifting through flea markets for rare and unique games, we can help. Retro City Games in Henderson, Nevada, only 5 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, has all your favorite gaming staples, classics, and a wide selection of rare games with new stuff always appearing on our shelves. Come in and chat with Nicole or Doug about your love of games and watch as they help you complete your collection or find your childhood favorite. And don't forget, Retro City Games loves trade-ins. So if you have any Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, Xbox, PlayStation, or even PC games, come in and visit Retro City Games today. Welcome to the new metropolis of gaming, Retro City Games.
And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. Just want to go ahead and thank Shawn Burns one last time for going ahead and stopping by on the show. Truly cannot thank you enough for taking the time. And also check his shows out. Now You've Seen It, available now everywhere you get your podcasts. And Battle List coming April 1st to all podcast outlets. Well, my friend, I wanted to talk a little bit about Elder Scrolls real quick because Bethesda on their Twitter this week not only mentioned 1, but 2 anniversaries for a couple of their older games in the series. So I want to ask your thoughts, my friend. I know 2018 E3, they had talked about Elder Scrolls 6 being their next game. Let's say everything was still hunky-dory at this point in time and there was no coronavirus. Do you think at E3 they would have announced Elder Scrolls 6 coming out at the end of this year, right around holiday time, that would have been their next big game after Doom Eternal?
No, they wouldn't have. We would have gotten to see more footage of it, and I hope that we do. Bethesda's still supposed to be working on. They're still supposed to be doing a conference, so I'm sure we're going to get to see some footage of it, but I don't think we'd see it at holiday season. It's just such a massive game. I imagine if the earliest we'll see it is probably 2021, maybe spring if we're lucky, but even that's wishful thinking. So it could be, a summer release in 2021 holiday season. I think that people are willing to wait. Final Fantasy Versus 13, that took 8 years to come out. So I mean, there are a lot of fans who are willing to hang in there for something good. But here's the thing: if this doesn't come out the gate and deliver, then there's going to be something wrong, because not only will they have messed up the Fallout franchise, but they will have messed up their flagship franchise, and that will not bode well for them.
As someone who spent well over 100 hours on Oblivion and spent 30 hours on Skyrim before he got stuck in a bug that he couldn't get out of, I will say that Elder Scrolls has a great place in my heart, and hopefully, yes, I will get back into Skyrim before the next Elder Scrolls comes out. I wouldn't put it past Bethesda. They could possibly bring it out this year. That's what I'm hoping for. But I just want a good version of Elder Scrolls. Obviously, the taste that was left by Fallout 76 is still there for a lot of people, and they associate Fallout with Elder Scrolls a lot because it uses the same type of technology, the same type of format, the same type of open world and whatnot. So I'm hoping that they'll make better choices with Elder Scrolls when Elder Scrolls 6 finally comes out. For me, I'm thinking still possibly this year, but I have a feeling you're right, and that they'll go ahead now because of what's going on, that they'll delay it for 2021 and a 10-year anniversary from Skyrim. What are your thoughts out there on Elder Scrolls? Let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. I just want to cover 2 last things before we head on out, my friend, and that was Star Trek Picard. I know a lot of people are now getting access to CBS All-Access because it's 30-day free now. They opened that up a lot. It went from the 7 days to 30 days, so now people can check out the entire series on Star Trek Picard because Season 1 just ended. All I can say is it is a little bit uneven. There are some real high points and some real low points. Overall, I think it's a decent watch. The last episode is very congested, but the one thing that it does offer that will please long-term Star Trek fans is especially if you're a fan of Star Trek The Next Generation, if you're a fan of the relationship and the camaraderie between Captain Jean-Luc Picard and Data, which on the surface ended in the 2000s with Star Trek Nemesis, you will get a closure on that relationship between those two that is satisfying. But again, you have to go through an uneven ride and sometimes some sloppy storytelling in order to get there. But overall, it's a decent watch, and I do recommend Star Trek Picard. But yes, there are some things in there I probably would have done differently. But the last episode, outside of it's, once you go through all the congestion of what's going on with the other side stuff and all that, and trying to flesh out everyone's storyline, and unfortunately not doing a great job of completing any of them, the one thing that does get completed is the bond between Data and Jean-Luc Picard. Now, what happens to Jean-Luc Picard is kind of far-fetched, especially the fact that they've already gone and used that trope for him once already in the distant past. But you know what? I guess it's for the best because they got to go ahead and have him come back for season 2. You can't go ahead and have a Star Trek Picard without Picard himself. So it is Star Trek Picard. Just be prepared for a bumpy ride along the way to get to the end goal so you can see an actual closure of the relationship between Data and Jean-Luc Picard. Now, my friend, I wanted to ask you this before we head on out, and that is the Nintendo Direct Mini. Could you enlighten our listeners on some of the big keys, the big points of interest?
They opened up with was something that people have been talking about for a long time, but they just haven't announced, is 2K porting BioShock Collection to Switch. Also, Borderlands. They announced the Borderlands Legacy Collection, so that will be a release of Borderlands 1 and 2 and the pre-sequel. Big thing that came out was Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. So, I mean, that was a really fun game from back in the day. And that's one that they are remastering. It'll be available May 29th, 2020. And they are also creating original content for it. So like an epilogue, they're calling it. So you can go back and you can play the game and then play a part of the game that you never got to play. Because with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, they picked it up with a new character. There's some expansions come out for Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, The Black Order. There's a game called Shinsaki Into the Deep, which looks pretty cool. Kind of reminds me of Echo the Dolphin from Sega. Animal Crossing New Horizons. There's a special Easter event coming up. Okay, so now they're talking about this game called Good Job. It came out today. It's $19.99. It looks really fun. Like you're going through it, you're helping your dad out the office, and you're trying to do jobs, and you're just messing everything up. Like just the animations look fun, the music sounds fun, the game looks fun, but I don't know if it's worth $20 to me. Next thing, Catherine Full Body on Switch, so you can go back and play that. That game was pretty stressful.
Pretty weird, pretty different.
Yeah,
and this game will never die. They're not letting this game die.
It's almost been ported more times than Skyrim, and that's saying a lot. King's Bounty. So I don't know if anyone's into that series, but they're releasing that in 2020 on Switch. King's Bounty 2. They announced a new Super Smash Bros. Fighter is from ARMS and going to be released in June sometime, but they haven't given an exact date.
Plus, they're giving a free trial for ARMS.
Free trial for ARMS. Bravely Default 2 is something coming out. So Bravely Default 1, if I remember, that was only released in Japan. I want to say I got a buddy who's really into that game, but they're releasing Bravely Default 2 in 2020. Still haven't given any like release dates on that. What else? Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy. It's one of the most like janky games in the Star Wars universe, but it still is very endearing and fun. That came out today. You can play that. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer is coming out, but they have not given a release date on that. We all remember that from Nintendo 64. Panzer Dragoon, fully remade version of the Sega Saturn game, is out now. You can pick it up today. Trials of Mana, one that I'm really excited about. They announced that will be out April 24th. And then, as you said, the Pokemon Sword and Shield expansions will be out by the end of June. And they also kind of gave some dates, tentative dates for other things. Like Fuser comes out in 2020. Elder Scrolls Blade is spring 2020. Warhammer 40,000, May 2020. Burnout Paradise remastered sometime in 2020. Saints Row, March 27th. And Minecraft Dungeons, spring of 2020.
A lot of good stuff coming there. Ring Fit Adventure, though, people laughed at that, when it came out. It's something that Nintendo was going to go ahead and be somewhat serious about. But again, just like we saw back with the Wii and all the boards that were bought, and now they're all sitting at Retro City Games, from what I see every time I go in there, or it was just a full stack of Wii boards that were sitting there for the exercise boards. But Ring Fit Adventure, people need to take it seriously now because it's sold out everywhere, and they just added a rhythm game DLC to it. So people are getting more fun out of Ring Fit Adventure. It is a good workout. I've heard some good things about it, and there's a lot of other great things that went on in this Nintendo Direct Mini. And thanks, Josh. I really appreciate you getting everybody up to speed on it, because there are a lot of good things that are coming out for the Nintendo Switch. Right now, it is the best-selling of all the units. It's hard to get any of the systems at this point in time because people just want to do something while they're inside. But the Nintendo Switch is selling like hotcakes, and it's good to see, even at this time, that Nintendo is supporting its best-selling console. What are your thoughts out there on the Nintendo Direct Mini? Please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, it's been a great episode, my friend. Got a lot to talk about for our Monday show coming up. One last thing I want to ask you, my friend. I know a lot of people have been talking to me about it off camera and out there on the internet and all that, since I am somewhat affiliated with it. At some point in time, you and I are going to have to discuss Contagion and a movie that's not so near and dear to my heart, Outbreak. Going to have to go ahead and watch those, man.
Yes, we will.
I did watch Contagion again recently.
I got Contagion on my Amazon Prime, so I'll give it a watch.
Okay, and we can also talk about Outbreak too, because the reason why is both are hot right now because of what's going on with the coronavirus. They're both at the top of the Apple charts. So obviously, since a lot of other people are doing it and it is trending, It's what we got to talk about at some point in time in the near future. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.